That morning, when she called to say she was finally coming home, I thought the nightmare was over. I didn't know that by the end of the day, I'd be the one walking away, not from her, but from everything we built together. And when she arrived, she wasn't alone. She brought her travel friends. One of them was the man who'd taken my place long before I realized I'd lost it. Before I tell you what happened next, make sure you've liked this video, subscribed to the channel, and turned on the bell icon, because this one changed everything for me. My name's Jack, and for the longest time, I thought I had a good marriage. Not perfect, but real. Emma and I had been together for 7 years, married for 4. She was warm, funny, and loved traveling. I, on the other hand, was more grounded. I loved coming home, cooking dinner, sitting on the couch after a long day. I thought that balance worked. I thought it kept us strong. But sometimes love isn't enough when only one person is fighting for it. It started 3 months ago. Emma had been offered a business trip overseas, 2 weeks, she said, for a client project her company was handling. She seemed excited, maybe even too excited. I didn't think much of it. She'd always been ambitious, and I was proud of her. The day she left, she hugged me like it was just another goodbye. I didn't know then that she was hugging me for the last time as her husband in her heart. The first week passed normally. We talked every night. She sent me photos, beaches, cafes, sunsets. She laughed on the phone, said she missed me. But slowly, the calls became shorter. Texts came less often. Her tone changed, colder, distracted. I tried to tell myself she was just busy, that maybe she was exhausted from work. But something inside me whispered that she was gone already, not physically, but emotionally. One night, I couldn't sleep. It was past midnight when I opened her social media, something I rarely did. She posted a photo. It wasn't anything explicit, just a group picture from a dinner. But there was something about it. A man beside her, sitting a little too close, smiling a little too easily. His hand was on the back of her chair. Her caption said, "Team dinner. So grateful for this project." I didn't want to believe it, but my gut wouldn't rest. For the next few days, I watched. I noticed patterns, late-night messages, more photos with the same man, and that subtle distance between us that no phone call could ever bridge anymore. When she finally called one evening, her voice was cheerful, too cheerful. "Hey, Jack, I have some amazing news. The client extended our stay. Isn't that great?" Something in me cracked, but I forced a smile as she couldn't see. I said, "That's nice. You must be happy." "Oh, you have no idea," she laughed. When the call ended, I stared at the ceiling for hours. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know how deep it went. The day she was supposed to return, the day everything fell apart, started like any other. I cleaned the house, even made her favorite meal. I wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, I was overthinking, that love could survive distance. At around 6 p.m., I heard the sound of tires outside. I smiled, my heart racing, and walked to the door. But the moment I opened it, the world shifted. There she was, standing in front of me, suitcase in hand, but she wasn't alone. Behind her stood 3 people, her travel friends, 2 women, a man, the same man from those pictures, the one with the easy smile. "Jack," she said, forcing a laugh, "I hope you don't mind, but my colleagues are staying here for a couple of days before they head back. The hotels are all booked," and I didn't let her finish. I looked at her, then at him. His eyes met mine, steady, almost confident. He extended his hand. "Hey man, I've heard a lot about you," he said. I didn't shake it. I stepped aside silently and let them in. They walked past me like they belonged there, like I was the guest. I watched as Emma gave him a look that lasted too long, the kind of look you don't give a coworker. Dinner that night was quiet, tense. I played along. I smiled, asked polite questions, but every laugh she shared with him cut a little deeper. I felt invisible in my own home. After everyone went to bed, I sat alone in the living room staring at the photos on the wall.
Our wedding picture, our first trip, and her smile that once meant everything. And that's when the thought first rose my mind. A small, wild spark of defiance. If she could walk into my home with him, pretend like nothing had changed, then maybe it was time I reminded her that everything had. I looked around at the house, the memories, the walls, the life we built, and I made a decision that night. A quiet one, a final one. Tomorrow, this house wouldn't be hers anymore. At night, I barely slept. I could hear their laughter echoing violate from the guest rooms upstairs. Every sound was like a reminder of how far she'd gone from me, even while under the same roof. I sat in the dark, the ticking clock in the living room, the only company I had left. I looked at everything we owned, the couch we chose together, the photos on the wall, the curtains she had insisted on. This house wasn't just a building, it was our story. But now, every corner, every memory felt poisoned. I knew I couldn't live in it anymore, not with her lies still echoing through these walls. At sunrise, I got up, made myself a cup of coffee, and sat by the window. That's when I made my decision final. I was going to sell this house, not out of revenge, but to free myself from the silent prison she turned it into. Later that morning, Emma came downstairs, pretending nothing was wrong. She smiled, stretching her arms. "Good morning, Jack," she said lightly. "You're up early." I smiled back. Yeah, I couldn't sleep. Behind her, I saw him, the same man from her trip, walk into the kitchen like he belonged there. His name was Ryan. I remembered now. She'd mentioned him before, calling him a colleague. He greeted me casually, his tone confident. "Morning, man. Great place you got here." "Thanks," I replied calmly, sipping my coffee. "I'm glad you like it. It won't be mine anymore." He frowned slightly, confused, but didn't ask more. Emma just gave a small, awkward laugh. "Jack's joking," she said, quickly, avoiding my eyes. But I wasn't. That afternoon, while they were all out shopping, I made a few calls. I contacted a real estate agent I knew Florida, a man who can move things fast if needed. When he picked up, I said, "I want this house sold, quietly, no delays." "Are you sure, Jack?" "Yes, it's a beautiful property. I'm sure. I just want it gone." He agreed to start the paperwork immediately. I sent him everything, the documents, the signatures, everything she left in my name. Within hours, the process had begun.
When Ember returned that evening, her arms were full of shopping bags. She looked happy, happier than I'd seen her in months. "Jack, look what I bought. Some new curtains for the living room. The old ones look so dull." I looked at her for a moment, then at the bags. "Curtains," I said quietly, "for a house that won't be ours much longer." Her smile faded. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, forcing a polite smile. "You'll see soon enough." She stared at me for a few seconds, trying to read my expression, then shook her head. "You're acting strange lately." Maybe I was, or maybe I was finally seeing things clearly. That night, Ryan's parents, yes, his parents, came by for dinner. Apparently they were in town, and Emma had invited them over without even asking me. It was surreal. My wife sitting at our table laughing with his family, like this was all normal. Ryan's mother smiled warmly at me. She said, "You're so quiet, Jack," she said. "Emma tells us you work in finance." "Used to," I said calmly. "These days, I'm more into investments." Emma shot me a confused look, but I continued. "I recently made one, a big one, sold something valuable. You'll hear about it soon." There was an uneasy silence for a moment. Then Emma laughed awkwardly and changed the subject. But I could tell she felt something shift, a subtle tension, like a storm building behind my calm voice. After dinner, when everyone went to the guest rooms, I went out to the backyard. The night air was cold. The lights inside glowed warm through the windows, but that warmth didn't reach me anymore. I took out my phone and checked the email from the real estate agent. The sale was almost complete. One final signature, and it would be done. The next morning, I woke up early again. I watched Emma and Ryan leave for what they called a quick meeting. As soon as they were gone, I drove to the real estate office and signed the final papers. The buyer had already transferred the deposit. In less than a week, the house wouldn't belong to me anymore. When I came back home, Emma was sitting on the couch, sipping coffee, pretending everything was normal. "Where'd you go?" she asked casually. "Just ran a few errands," I replied. She smiled faintly. "You can distant lately, Jack. Is something wrong?" I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her. The woman I'd once loved, the woman who made me believe in forever. I said softly, "You'd tell me. Is there?" She blinked, unsure how to respond. Then her phone buzzed and she grabbed it quickly, smiling as she read the screen. A message, no doubt, from him. She turned slightly away, typing something back. I just stood there watching her. The way her eyes lit up when she smelled at her phone, a smile I hadn't seen in months. And for the first time, I didn't feel pain. I felt peace, because I knew what was coming, and she didn't know. That night, as everyone slept, I walked through the house one last time, room by room, touching the walls, the furniture, the memories. I wasn't angry anymore. I was saying goodbye, not to her, but to the version of myself that once believed love could survive betrayal. And as I stood in the doorway, the papers in my pocket, I whispered to the empty room, "This chapter's over." But I had no idea the next morning would bring something I hadn't planned for, something that would change my revenge into something much deeper. The morning after I signed the papers, everything felt strangely quiet, the kind of silence that comes before a storm. I sat in the living room, sipping my coffee slowly, watching the sunlight creep across the wooden floor. The house didn't feel like mine anymore, and that was the best feeling I'd had in a long time. I'd already packed most of my belongings into boxes, the ones that really mattered, a few books, old photos, and a watch my father gave me before he passed. Everything else could stay. It wasn't worth a way of memory. By noon, Emma came downstairs looking half asleep, but wearing a bright smile. "Morning," she said casually. "Ryan's taking his parents to lunch. Want to come with us?" I looked at her, almost amused. "No," I replied softly. "I have a few things to take care of." She nodded impressively. Maybe she thought I was still sulking, or that I'd eventually get over it. Either way, she had no idea what was waiting for her. When they left, I walked upstairs and opened the closet. Empty hangers and neat rows of clothes, and on the top shelf, wedding shoes. She hadn't worn them in years, but she'd kept them, maybe as a memory. I stared at them for a moment, remembering the woman who once cried tears of joy while saying she'd never leave me. I smiled sadly. "You already did," I whispered. At exactly 4 p.m., I got a call from the real estate agent. "It's Jack. Everything's done," he said. "The buyer's coming tomorrow to take possession. The house officially transfers tonight." "Perfect," I replied. Transfer the final documents to my email. And just like that, it was no longer mine. The house, the symbol of everything I built, was gone. But instead of feeling lost, I felt lighter, like I'd finally let go of a ghost I'd been carrying for too long. A few hours later, Emma and her guest returned. She was laughing as she entered, holding a small box from a jewelry store. "Jack, look what Ryan bought for me," she said, showing me a delicate bracelet. "That's nice," I said calmly, my tone even. Ryan grinned proudly, draping an arm around his shoulder. "She deserves it, man. She's been through a lot." I raised my eyebrow. "Has she?" He hesitated a split second, then shrugged it off, trying to rush it off with a laugh. "Just saying. She's special." I nodded slowly. "Yeah," I said softly. "She was." Emma frowned slightly at my tongue, but before she could ask anything, I stood up and walked down the hallway. "And by the way, someone's coming by tomorrow morning. Make sure it all packs up." "Packed," she repeated, confused,
Packed for what? I didn't answer. I just smiled, that calm kind of smile that hides a truth to explain in words, and went upstairs. That night I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake listening to the faint sound of laughter from the guest rooms. It felt surreal. These people, these strangers, enjoying comfort in the very place where my heart had shattered. But their comfort was temporary. At sunrise, I got dressed, picked up my car keys, and laid outside waiting. Around 8, real estate agent arrived with the buyer, a tall man in gray suit, holding a folder of papers. "Mr. Walker," he said, politely, "thank you for being on time. We'll just do a quick doctor." "Of course," I said. We stepped inside. The house was quiet. Emma and the others were still asleep. The buyer walked around, checking every room, nodding approvingly. "Beautiful home. You've taken great care of it."
I smiled faintly. It served its purpose. When we reached the living room, Emma appeared at the top of the stairs, still in her robe, rubbing her eyes.
Jack, who are these people?
I looked up at her, calm and unbothered. "This is the new owner," I said evenly. "He's here to take possession." For a moment, she didn't understand.
Possession?
She repeated, frowning. Then realization began to dawn on her face.
What are you talking about?
I stepped closer. "The house," I said quietly. "I sold it."
You sold our house?
"Correction," I said, my tone still calm. "I sold my house. You gave up your part of it the day you brought him here."
Ryan came down behind her, looking confused. "Wait, hold on. You can't just sell the house without..."
I cut him off. "Actually, I can. It was fully under my name. Every brick, every tile, every memory. And now, none of it belongs to me or to you."
Emma's face turned pale. "Jack, you can't be serious. Where are we supposed to go?"
I tilted my head slightly. "Maybe you should ask him." I glanced at Ryan. After all, he seems to have everything figured out, except where to stay, apparently.
For a moment, the room was silent. Then Ryan muttered,
"You're insane, man."
I smiled softly. "No," I said. "Just done."
Emma's voice broke. "Jack, please, don't do this. We can talk."
"Talk," I repeated. "You had plenty of time to talk. You just chose to whisper instead to him."
Her eyes filled with tears. "It's not what you think," she began, but I raised my hand gently.
"Hey, don't," I said quietly. "You've already said enough. I don't hate you, Emma. I just don't want to live inside a memory that doesn't belong to me anymore." I walked toward the front door, opened it, and looked back one last time. The buyer handed her paper and said politely, "You'll need to vacate by evening."
Her lips trembled. "Jack!"
But I didn't respond. I just walked out into the sunlight, closed the door behind me, and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt free. But little did I know, freedom sometimes comes with its own price, and mine was waiting just around the corner. I remember the way the morning sunlight hit my face as I stepped out of that house for the last time. It was strange. The same sunlight that once poured through our windows when we danced in the kitchen now felt completely different, brighter, warmer, freer. I sat in my car for a moment, looking back through the windshield. The house looked smaller somehow, like it had already started fading into a memory. As I drove away, the city felt louder than usual. People moving, lives rushing, stories overlapping. Everyone had their own battles, their own heartbreaks. Mine was finally over. Or at least that's what I thought. I checked into a small hotel by the coast that evening. The sound of the waves calmed me. The salt in the air felt like a new beginning. I took out my phone and scrolled through my photos. The old ones from happier times. Emma and I on vacations, laughing over coffee, celebrating anniversaries. For a moment, I almost missed her. But then I remembered the look on her face, and when I told her the house was gone, not out of pain, but out of disbelief that I actually done what she never thought I could. I closed the gallery,
locked my phone, and just sat there listening to the ocean. Maybe this was what peace sounded like. 3 days passed before I heard from her again. I was having breakfast when my phone buzzed. A message from Emma. I stared at the screen for a while before replying. I hope you find somewhere safe. Take care. I didn't send it immediately. My thumb hovered over the screen for a good minute before I finally hit send. It was the hardest, simple text I ever written. A few minutes later, she called. I didn't answer. The phone kept vibrating on the table over and over until it finally stopped. The silence afterwards was heavier than the sound itself. That afternoon, I went for a walk along the beach. I didn't realize how tired I had been until I felt the sand beneath my feet. With every wave that crashed into me, I felt something wash away. Guilt, anger, maybe even love. Then, out of nowhere, I heard someone behind me.
Jack?
I turned. It was Ryan. He looked nothing like the confident man who had once stood in my kitchen. His hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled, and there was something desperate in his eyes. I said calmly, Ryan, you lost something.
You think this is funny? You ruined our lives.
I smiled faintly. Did I? Or did you just build your life on something that was never yours?
He stepped closer. Emma's a mess. She hasn't stopped crying since you left.
That's between her and her conscience, not me.
He ran a hand through his hair, shaking his head. You know, she actually thought you'd forgive her. She said you were the kind of guy who couldn't hold grudges.
I chuckled softly. She was half right. I don't hold grudges. I just let go of what's broken.
He looked at me for a long time, then said, You'll regret this one day.
Maybe, but none today. When I looked again, he was gone. Only the waves remained, endless and calm. Later that evening, I packed my things. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay in that hotel forever. I decided to visit my brother, Mark, who lived a few hours away. When he opened the door, his face lit up.
Jack, you look different, man. Whiter.
Maybe I finally dropped the weight I was carrying. Oh, tonight I told him everything, the trip, the affair, the sale. He listened without interrupting, just nodding slowly. When he finished, he leaned back and said, You did the right thing, Jack. Sometimes peace isn't about forgiveness. It's about choosing yourself. That night, for the first time in months, I slept without waking up in the middle of the night. No memories, no echoes of laughter from another room. No guilt, just silence. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. No name, just an address, written in Emma's handwriting. Inside was a short note.
I understand now. You didn't take revenge. You gave me back the truth. I hope someday I find the peace you found.
I read it twice, folded it carefully, and placed it in my drawer. I didn't reply. Some things don't need an ending, just acknowledgement. Months passed. I found a small house near the ocean. Nothing fancy, just enough for one person. I spent my mornings painting, something I hadn't done since college. And every now and then, when the sun dipped low and the light turned golden, I'd sit by the window and think about how strange life is. You can lose everything you thought you couldn't live without, and somehow still find a way to breathe again. Sometimes I wonder if Emma ever found peace. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But I stopped wondering too much, because that's the thing about healing. It doesn't come when you get answers. It comes when you stop needing them. And as I sit here, watching another sunset fade into the horizon, I realize something. I didn't just sell a house that day. I sold the version of myself that believed love meant losing yourself. Now I own something far more valuable: freedom.